Are you ready to take your Game Boy Color to the next level? Stick around and I'll help you do just that. What's up everybody, SpeedDemon706 here, and I'm back with another video. And this video, I'm super excited. I've wanted to do a video like this for a long time. So obviously you're here because of the Funny Playing IPS Backlight Kit for the Game Boy Color. So this thing is probably what I would consider a jack of all trades. So talking about the history of backlight kits just for a second. Initially, the backlight kits for the Game Boy Colors were non-existent, obviously, duh. But whenever they did come into play, it was almost as if we were better without the backlight kit. And what I mean by that is, before the backlight kits, you had the front light kits. So to light up your Game Boy Color, you simply took the original screen and you got this piece of plexiglass that had a type of texture on it to help spread the light throughout the screen. And then you adhesed it with something called Loca. And you adhesed it to the screen and you could play your Game Boy Color during the night or basically with light. And there were a lot of drawbacks. One, you lost a lot of the integrity for the screen. Two, you can get a bubble or a few bubbles. And three, if you misaligned it, then you kind of had to live with it. So that wasn't really something that everybody was into, but it depended on how bad you wanted to play at night or play with light. So then years later, they came up with a backlight kit that was so washed out, that had so much ghosting, and it was really hard to see, to the point where it almost wasn't worth it. Then fast forward a little bit more. You had the new backlight kits from Midwest Embedded, Ben Freckle Shack, and a few others. So those were actually pretty revolutionary to me, in my opinion. Those kits had actual light up LCD screens, and those were actually really nice quality. The only drawback is you sacrificed some of your screen size, which, you know, that was okay. That's a good workaround because it was revolutionary. It was something amazing. So to me, whenever I got one of those kits, I actually got a Ben Freckle Shack. It was like 70 to 80 bucks. But when I got one, it was amazing to me. I had all of the colors, there was little to no ghosting, it was just amazing. Well, now we have this Funny Playing IPS Backlight Kit, and to me, it leaps and bounds better than the other kits. So if you actually go to Retro Modding, which I want to give a shout out to Retro Modding because they are some of the most humble people and they put their customers first. I'll share why at the end of the video, but props to Retro Modding. Anyways, looking at their website, we can see the full specs. Check it out.
So if you go to retromodding.com, you can find the Game Boy Color IPS LCD, and it runs for about $49.99 or 50 bucks. And it's currently sold out. When I got it, they didn't last very long, and this comes from Funny Playing. So the features, it features a crisp, vibrant display, proportional image, fast refresh rate with no blur, easy solder-free installation, 10 brightness levels with touch brightness controller, and we're going to talk about that. Included, you get your screen, one ribbon cable adapter, and it says 3D printed centering brackets, but it doesn't come with that, and one foam tape, which that does come. And then they also have our tutorial, which I'm going to show you guys here in a little bit, and that's also part of what I referenced. And then some of the notes. The ribbon is very fragile. Be sure to install carefully. We strongly recommend testing the display before installing it in your Game Boy Color. We do that in the video, and it's just good practice to make sure you don't go too far in. And then it just goes on to talk about how you need to treat the LCD with care because, again, you can damage it with having too much pressure. And also the warning, it can break under pressure if dropped. So just be careful when you're installing this product. And then, like any ribbon cables, all ribbon cables are fragile, so just install it carefully. Alright, so we're going to go look at the tutorial, and it's pretty straightforward. You go there and it gives you a little introduction of what you're going to be doing, and it's going to show you what you need. And of course, it's a lot of the same stuff that I show here in a little bit. Your Game Boy, your Funny Playing kit, pre-trimmed shell, recommended. They sell pre-trimmed shells. I didn't get one, I did my own. But anyways, moving on here, it just goes step by step, and it shows you what things should look like. I'm a visual learner, and that's how I like to do my projects. So here's a before on the inside of the shell, and then here's an after, and this is roughly what we're going to do. It's slightly different and you'll see, but again, this is a tutorial and it's just to serve as a guide, and I'm sure everybody does things different. And then here it shows these pins and the part of this terminal that need to be trimmed, and so I thought this is actually really useful to see. So they have all of that trimmed in the after picture right here. Alright, and in here it shows about how you lay in the LCD with the ribbon cable, and that was actually pretty useful. And that's that bracket they were talking about. So they don't include that in the kit. Okay, so moving on to the installation. You're going to need a Game Boy with a toolkit, our shell because why not, the IPS LCD kit, some tape, a Dremel tool, and an X-Acto knife. So here we're going to go ahead and start modifications on our new shell. So we're going to cut that top bracket, that bottom bracket, and that little piece above the D-pad. I like to score the edges, and it's kind of like perforating the plastic, kind of like a perforated piece of paper. And once you do that, just flip it onto the other side and do the same thing. Just score the edges, add slight pressure, and just make a few passes at it. And then once that's done, just look at where the plastic makes right angle turns or whatever the case may be, and you just want to run your X-Acto knife down and make that cut down to the base of the Game Boy. Just be careful and don't cut too far down to make any damages that you'll see through the plastic. But once that's done, all you got to do is just add a little bit of pressure and it should just snap off and make one nice clean break, just like that. And now we're going to remove this part right here. So all you need to do for these little tight spots is just simply press down on your plastic with your X-Acto knife and do the same thing. Just score the edges and just press down at every angle where they make that turn, and then simply just scrape along the bottom, or you can even just use some pressure and push. Alright, now moving to the top, we're going to cut in between here and here. That little notch is where you kind of want to stop. So just do the same thing. Score the edges and cut in between the plastic where they make those angles, and just use pressure. Now it may not come out exactly perfect, but I prefer this method as opposed to using a Dremel for the housing, because once you Dremel something away, you can't undremel it. And this way it's a little bit more precise. It might take a little bit more time, but to me this was more effective and it was more precise, and I don't want to have to waste a shell then try to order a new one and do the same thing again. And like I said, just take your time and don't worry about how many little different pieces there are. Just take your time. And one cool part about this is on this bracket, you don't have to worry about cosmetic damage, because all those scratches and everything is going to be covered up by the front screen whenever we place it in there. The only place you really have to worry about is just above the D-pad, and even then it's not that big of a deal, so don't get too fixated on not causing any problems. Alright, now so we're going to go to our IPS LCD funny playing kit. So it comes in this cool little container, and they come in different colors. The last kit I got, it was a brown container, and this one's an orange. Alright, so inside we have our ribbon cable with all those little chips on it, and we have, of course, our LCD screen, and then we have that foam tape. I don't know if it's really foam tape, it's just 3M double-sided tape, and I ended up not really using it. But anyways, taking this thing and looking at it, it looks amazing. It looks like it was made very well. So what we're going to do is we're going to set it inside of our shell and kind of use it as a template to see how it fits and see if we need to adjust anything else. At the top, those two little brackets that hold in the IR sensor, I end up cutting those out anyway because it's forcing the screen to sit too low. So turn it over and make sure everything has a decent fit, so that way you can make sure you know where you're making your cuts. Now I use my screen as a template to just score the edges on this ring on the D-pad so I know where I'm going to cut. And here I just do the same thing. I push down with my X-Acto knife to push down to the base to get that little section cut out. Now here I like to cut them in little sections because it's round, it's not a flat straight surface like the bracket was. And if you cut these in smaller chunks, it's a lot easier to remove. Now if you can't get them to come out by just force, then yes, you might have to score the edges. I try to be careful about accidentally made a couple little cuts, but again, it's nothing big and it's not going to detract from the end result. Just take your time and cut away any uneven surfaces or any burrs. Alright, and looks good. So once again, go ahead and grab your screen and refit it. Refit it as many times as you want. There is no limit on how many times you can refit this. At the end of the day, you can cut as much as you want, but you can't uncut. So again, like I was saying before, the two little tabs by the IR sensor force the screen to sit too low. But the rest of the screen sits in nice, it's nice and flush, and there's no gaps, and it's going to set well. So let's move on to our Game Boy. Here's our donor Game Boy, and it's in good working condition. So what we're going to do is flip it over and take out the screws on the back. There's these 6 screws, and they all take the tri-wing head attachment. So once you get those removed, go ahead and take off the back and then focus on the inside. So now we're going to detach the motherboard with these 3 screws right here. These are Phillips. So go ahead and take those out. Once those are out, then we're going to shift our focus to the top of the Game Boy where the ribbon cable is. It's held in by a locking bar with a tab on the left and right of the ribbon. So lift those tabs up and simply just pull out the ribbon cable. Once that's done, take out the motherboard. Now we're going to get our IPS LCD kit and we're going to go ahead and assemble it to make sure it works before you get too far into this mod. So we have our kit and we're going to take our ribbon cable, make sure metal contacts are facing up, and then just simply lock it down with a locking bar. Alright, once that's done, take the motherboard and go ahead and place it in the back of the Game Boy because we're going to need to use the battery terminals. Now, take the screen and attach it to the ribbon cable, and it should go in this orientation where the red tab is facing away from the Game Boy and away from the ribbon cable. And just be careful because it is fragile. Go ahead and pop in some AA batteries and power it on to see if everything works. Success. Everything works and everything looks just fine. So we're going to go ahead and move on. We're going to focus on our motherboard now. Remember those pins that I showed you earlier? I did this off screen. I used my Dremel tool and I simply just knocked away those pins and I made it as low and smooth as I could get it. I did the same thing with the terminal. Everything's smooth and there's no jagged edges. So once that's done, I took a piece of tape and I covered up a lot of the motherboard as well as those pins so I don't have any metal to metal contact. I also took a small piece of tape and I put it here on the battery terminal as well. Alright, now what I have here is the screen. I got an aftermarket screen of the first generation Pokemon, and I take off the adhesive and I go ahead and place it on the front screen simply because when I push this on, I don't want to apply pressure with the screen in it and take any chances of running the LCD kit. And also by doing this, this allows dust to not get in whenever I set in the LCD. So right here, I do a test fit. I place in the D-pad and then I place in the LCD kit to see if there's any impingement between the D-pad and the screen. So make sure when you're doing this, you just be mindful of that sensor wire. But so far so good. Now, I recommend putting the silicone contact there because it does require a little bit of space and everything fits. So once that was done, I took off the silicone pad and I simply taped the LCD screen to the shelf so that way it alleviates any movement. And in here, I folded over the ribbon cable so that way I can also tape it in position to keep it from moving around and possibly getting snagged or doing any damage. And then at this point, I went ahead and replaced all of my buttons and all of my silicone pads. Alright, now I take the motherboard and I place the ribbon cable back in, and make sure you lock this down with a locking bar and both tabs are pushed down. Sometimes when you push down on one side, it'll lift up on the other. Make sure the motherboard fits just fine and everything's nice and snug. Once that's done, go ahead and flip it over and check the buttons. Make sure that everything functions correctly and everything has freedom of movement, and we're good to go. All you need to do is replace the 3 Phillips screws. Now for this adhesive part, do not stick it all completely on the inside of this IR window. Raise it slightly and fold the little top edge of that adhesive over the side of that IR sensor. Basically, you want it to stick up so that way it can still touch your finger whenever you tap the IR sensor. Here it's not done yet, but I'm going to show you at the end of the video. But if you understand what I'm talking about, then go ahead and do it and then just continue on with this tutorial. Anyways, whenever you stick in this IR sensor, you want to be careful because you don't want to damage that LCD screen. Once you get it in there, then place in the wire and place in your power button And once those are done, just simply place on the back of the Game Boy. Now when you do this, make sure that everything sits nice and flush and everything closes correctly. There shouldn't be any huge gaps. Once that's done, replace the screws in the back of the Game Boy, and for me, I kept the original tri-wing screws because to me they're better quality, and the screws that come with this seem to strip or just not really work the best. Once that's done, go ahead and power on your Game Boy and check it out. Right off the bat, we've got good brightness, nice clarity, and it even has good colors. It looks like it's a good refresh rate, doesn't look like there's any tearing or any blurriness. It looks good. Now this is the IR problem I was talking about. The IR sensor doesn't respond, and this is the second kit that I've got that does that. However, after messing around with it, I got it to work and advertised as 10 levels of brightness. However, there's only 6. Here's what I did. So just take that adhesive sensor and slide it up just slightly enough to fold over the edge of that IR window. And then you should be able to screw it back down and you won't have to worry about it tearing or peeling. And it works just fine. So with that being said, we have our final product.
Alright, that's it for today's video. So hopefully you can get your hands on one of these IPS backlight kits for your Game Boy Color and assemble it the same way I did, maybe a little bit different. And once again, these are only here to serve as a guide, not a you will follow this. Now I did watch a video from the YouTube channel called The Chinese Guy. That's his actual YouTube channel name, I promise. But he has a really good tutorial. It's kind of short, but I'll link it in the description below. The Chinese Guy. He's the one that I followed, as well as the instructions on retro modding. So I know at the end of the video, I said I was going to talk about retro modding and why I really like them. So a while back, they had pushed out an email to US buyers stating that there was going to be some orders that basically weren't going to be fulfilled. So they had asked for everybody to reply that email and ask about what to do in case their order wasn't fulfilled. I had reached out to them inquiring about the email, and so they issued me a refund for something that I had already bought. So realizing that, I messaged them and said, hey, I've already bought this stuff and I've received my package. I'd be more than happy to pay the money back because I've already received my package. And they replied back and they said, no worries, it's on us. And to me, that really speaks a lot about a company. And it wasn't much, it was like $9 to $10. It wasn't a whole bunch, but it's the action behind it. And to me, that's gonna keep my business with them even longer. I've liked their products, I've liked their customer service. Anytime I ask them a question, they swiftly reply back and they're very respectful and very positive. So again, props to Retro Modding, and if you haven't shopped from Retro Modding, I highly encourage it because you will be taken care of, and if not, they will address it for you. I've never had any negative experiences, but I can tell you from firsthand experience that they are there for the customer. I also have taken some screenshots of our conversation and I've posted them to my Facebook page at SpeedDemon8706 on Facebook. So if you want to know more, then I encourage you to go there and check out those those photos. Anyways, that's all I got for today. I'm SpeedDemon8706. Have a great day.